Everyone, I'm Juan Fernandez.
I'm Crystal Cruz. President Donald Trump is launching a new attack on the Russia investigation.
And he's hitting back from several angles. KCAL 9 political reporter Dave Bryan has the president's strategy and reaction from lawmakers on both sides.
Yeah,
Dave?
the president is not known as someone who's, sitting back and letting things happen. No, he is going right after it. He's not backing off at all. Ironically, President Trump's Wednesday morning tweet storm came just days after it was reported that prosecutors will be looking at the president's tweets as part of the collusion and obstruction Russia investigation. But that did not slow down the president today, who tweeted that his former campaign manager is being treated worse than gangster Al Capone was, and suggested that the investigation should be shut down. President Trump's frustration with special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation once again spilled over onto Twitter. The president tweeting Wednesday, "This is a terrible situation, and Attorney General Jeff Sessions should stop this rigged witch hunt right now before it continues to stain our country any further."
He's established a clear sort of practice now that he expresses his opinions on Twitter. He used the word should, he didn't use the word must. And there was no presidential directive that followed it.
It is good to be in the real world.
But in fact, Mr. Sessions cannot end the Russia probe because he recused himself. Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein oversees the investigation. In a rare moment of bipartisanship, both Republicans and Democrats on Capitol Hill say the president should not try to pressure anyone to cut off the special counsel's work.
First of all, I don't think the investigation should be shut down. I think it should be completed. I've said repeatedly that I think the Inspector General should be thorough, but I wish he'd hurry up.
That's just ridiculous. I mean, if the president is innocent, he should act like it, and he should cooperate with the Mueller investigation, have it go through to its logical conclusion, and then have his name cleared.
I think Mueller should finish his work, and the truth is what is going to be good for the president and good for the country.
The White House says President Trump was simply stating an opinion and not trying to issue an order to stop the probe.
The president is not obstructing, he's fighting back. The president is stating his opinion, he's stating it clearly, and he's certainly expressing the frustration that he has with the level of corruption that we've seen from people like Jim Comey, Peter Strzok, Andrew McCabe.
If he believes that, why doesn't he follow through on it?
Once again, the president has allowed this process to play out, but he thinks it's time for it to come to an end.
The president's tweets come as Paul Manafort, his former campaign chairman, is in court on fraud charges. And Mr. Trump also tweeted on that, comparing the treatment of Manafort with the treatment of Prohibition-era mobster Al Capone. Looking back on history, he wrote, "Who was treated worse, Alphonse Capone, legendary mob boss, killer, and public enemy number one, or Paul Manafort, political operative and Reagan-Dole darling, now serving solitary confinement, although convicted of nothing?"
It's clear to me that President Trump is very interested in Al Capone. Maybe he's read my book.
Jonathan Igue ought to know. He wrote the definitive book on Al Capone called Get Capone, the secret plot that captured America's most wanted gangster. And it may surprise you to learn the criminal cases against Capone and Manafort have some things in common, like spending huge amounts of cash on suits and clothes. In Manafort's case, a witness testifying this week that he spent nearly $1 million on suits during a 5-year period. And that's being used against him as part of an alleged bank and tax fraud scheme. As for Capone, Ige told me in a Skype interview from Atlanta that Capone also had plenty to spend on the most expensive suits.
Yeah, Capone would buy dozens of suits at a time. He would buy them in really wild colors. He would have extra pockets, heavy pockets put in to put his gun in there. And he would order extraordinary amounts of food from the butcher. All this stuff was used by the prosecutors to show that he must have more money than he knows what to do with.
Ike says Capone was charged with tax evasion even though he was known for his mafia violence.
Everyone knew Capone was behind murders. Everyone knew he was selling booze during Prohibition when that was illegal. But those things were hard to prove because he didn't shoot the guns himself. So what case can you make more confidently? Well, we can prove that he didn't pay taxes. That's pretty obvious.
So the prosecutor's strategies in the two cases are similar. Attempt to prove that their wild and unrestrained spending of cash on clothes, real estate, and luxury items appears to be far beyond what was reported to the IRS for tax purposes. It worked in the Capone case, and in a few weeks we may find out whether it works in the Manafort case. Now, it should be pointed out that very much unlike Capone, no one has ever accused Paul Manafort of having been involved in any violent crimes like Capone, and that is a big difference to be sure. But the prosecution's tactics are still very similar in many ways. Crystal?
And Dave, why is the prosecution going to such great lengths to convict Manafort on these tax charges?
Well, yeah, that's the interesting thing, because they have a strategy here. And the strategy is, I think that there's reason to believe that the special prosecutor is pushing hard for a Manafort conviction on the tax and bank fraud charges, with the hope that the prospect of a long sentence might convince Manafort to flip and cooperate with prosecutors and become an informant in the Russia election meddling and collusion investigation. Now, the special counsel has never said that, but from the outside looking in, it appears to be the most probable theory for the hard push to convict Manafort on these tax charges. Juan, back to you.
Yeah, lots more to come for sure. Dave, thank you.